Every time we compare ourselves with others, we get trapped. And this is exactly what the generation today is getting into. They keep comparing and they take those comparisons as truth. What you came in inside the company with, right? Your skills or whatever, it does not matter. The value that you can add now matters. I think that changed my whole perspective. Every time we feel we have reached a success point or we have been successful, it means it's just the beginning. You should not be sticking to that point and saying, okay, I'm done. There's always more.
Well, Anjan, thank you very much for joining me on Success Matters. You reached out to me on a platform that we're both members of called talks.co because you wanted to share your story. So I thought, well, okay, let's let our listeners hear your story and what you've been doing and what you do today. So let's start with what brought you to where you are right now.
Thank you, Sanjay, for having me here. For me, it's more important for me, when I saw your whole podcast about defining success, which is different for everyone, it caught my attention. It is so true that everybody's understanding of success, everybody's path to that success is so different. So I wanted to share my message and my way of understanding success to you and to all your audio viewers. So.
Okay, cool. So when we met to prepare for this, you talked about your sort of educational journey that you went on. So would you like to share with the listeners that journey?
I was born and brought up in India for almost 25 years. I was completely, born and brought up there. And then when I decided to do my master's, that's when I decided to come here to United States. And it was a very emotional one when I started off the journey there, because leaving, friends and family, parents, it was a big thing for me. And those days we didn't even have social media like we have today. So I still remember those calling cards. That was the only thing only thing we had was calling cards. So even when I was in flights or I would just land anywhere, there was no way for me to communicate back to my home. So those were the times. It's very emotional at that time, leaving everyone and come.
Which part of India were you in?
Bangalore.
In Bangalore, okay.
Yeah.
So you went from Bangalore to the US to study your master's?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And what was your master's degree in?
Mine was networking and telecommunication.
Oh, okay. All right. So we're kind of in similar fields as a result of that. So that's interesting. You talked about the emotional kind of upheaval and turmoil. How did it make you feel when you kind of like that first week of being away from family or that first month? Because often you have that high and then the high goes and reality kind of sets in that now I'm here on my own.
Absolutely. I had never stepped out of my home to be independent, to be doing something independently. So this was crossing all those seas and coming here was a big thing. I remember I was so excited in the flight. And then when I got down here and just seeing everything strange, people, place, country, culture, everything being strange, it really, made me homesick for a couple of days. Like it was a lot to take in.
Right.
And, for me, the fact that we didn't have social media like how we used to have now, that was a difficult thing too. I remember going to the university and connecting to Wi-Fi and on the desktop there when I first logged into my mail and I saw my dad's email. It was the first ever email he wrote to anybody. So that was a huge thing for me to see his email. I was in tears, I can tell you that.
What did he say in that first email to you?
He just said, all the best. And I know there's a bright future waiting for you. You made choices and, we are always there with you, whatever happens. So that really meant everything to me.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure it did. It's like I was feeling the emotion then when you were saying that. That's a very touching, touching words to send.
Yeah.
For the first email ever for him to write. That's, very, very touching.
Yeah.
So, Anjan, what do you do today?
So today I am a Gen Z leadership coach. So what I do is work with Gen Z, that is age group of 20 to 30. These are the people who graduate and enter a corporate workplace. And for them, corporate realities are so different than the college life. So I train them through leadership and impactful habits so that they become more visible and credible in the industry they're working in. Because going by stats, over 63% of such generation who enter the corporate workplace in United States alone, they struggle to express themselves and always seem invisible or be taken seriously. So I help those people to make successful careers as early as possible instead of waiting for years to prove that.
Right. Okay. So, what are some of the, if you could list the top three things that you spot as gaps in their knowledge or capabilities or skills? What are those?
Sure. The first thing that comes to my mind is their mindset is full of instant validation because they live in the age of social media. So they feel like anything they like, they dislike, they post or they communicate, they get responses. So
Mm-hmm.
for them, they feel that when they enter the corporate workplace, they expect that same pace. So as soon as they do something, they need to get feedback, they need to know where they're doing, what they're doing right or wrong. So I think that pace doesn't work out in the
Mm-hmm.
corporate reality. Second gap I can think of is their expectation of what sometimes, in college life, it is so much crystal clear. They're given instructions. This is how they're supposed to do. That doesn't work that way. You have to figure things out. You have to collaborate. You have to talk to people. So that gap also creates that mindset. Okay, how do I do? How do I go about doing it effectively? And thirdly, I would say there's a gap because in a gap in terms of how they're used to dealing with college life, because they would have ways to just say, hang out with friends and figure out things like that. Here, everything is new. So they have to find those ways, find those people, figure out who are the people they need to contact with. So that landscape being new also is a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I suppose also on that last point in the workplace, you have the hierarchy as well. So when you're making your first
Correct.
steps in that network, do you feel confident enough to go and speak to a senior executive and say, "Hi, I'm Sanjay. I'm new to the company," versus because there is that aspect as well of the generational differences within an organization.
Absolutely. That is very true. The hierarchy, is a very new paradigm for them.
Mm. So what was it that led you to recognize this, to see this, and decide to do something about it?
Sure. I can tell you that when I did my master's and I just got into a job, my first job, 6 months into it, we had the great 2008 crash. Many people who are listening to this may not even know, but people who know anything about it, they know how dramatic that whole event was. Like it affected every industry across the globe. So, in the place where I was working, everybody's job was at risk. I still remember when my manager just called me in a meeting room and he said, what you came in inside the company with, right? Your skills or whatever, it does not matter. What you
Mm.
add now, the value that you can add now matters. I think that changed my whole perspective. And it's the same even for Gen Z today. They think, okay, they have the skills, they have the degrees, and they get into the companies, and that's it. They are just set for success. Things don't happen that way because these can let you in the door, but it won't take you to great heights. So that moment, it made me realize that more than all of this, if I didn't exhibit leadership, and if I didn't impactfully communicate what I wish to do, or let's say there's a problem I know and I can fix it, just knowing the solution wasn't going to help. How you impactfully communicate, how do you resonate with your leaders, how can you convince them, all these skills really make a difference. And that's how I was able to save my job. Otherwise I would have just gone like many other people, even who had 10 times experience than me. So that skills, though those skills that make a big difference, kind of created a vibe in me that I should do the same to many people who come into the workplace.
Okay. So when you talk about leadership, what do you mean by leadership?
So leadership means you you exhibit leadership habits even if you didn't have one. So people don't enter with titles. But when you don't have any title, a leadership title, how do you make sure you create a magnet of influence? That means, how can you show that you're interested in solving the problem at hand or the workplace where you're working and effectively communicate that? The moment you start doing it, that's the quality of the leader. The ability to learn a problem, the ability to communicate it, and resonating the two. So that itself is the beginning of a leadership quality. So exhibiting this quality, training to, how do you do that? That's one example I can give you.
Okay. So as a, I don't know, a young graduate who's come into the workplace, maybe been there for a year or two, um, how would you recommend that they start to demonstrate these leadership qualities? Because they're still relatively young in their kind of
Correct.
career and experience.
The way to go about would be this. They need to get very curious about the problem they're trying to solve. In any workplace, they're hired because there's an issue, there's a problem they're trying to solve. Either it's a scaling problem or something to build from scratch, whatever that is, right? So get curious. That curiosity to understand what that problem is can then lead to understanding how they can put their talent or their knowledge at at play. So they could be very good, for example, at collaboration. They could be very good at simplification. They could be very good at researching something on that. So use that skill, use that talent, but only after you understand the problem at hand. So when you start doing that, you automatically build credibility because you show that you're interested, you're able to apply your skill to the problem at hand, and you build credibility. With that credibility, when you start displaying that in every meeting, every interaction with people, that creates connection with those people. So once that connection is established, people begin to see you as accountable, somebody you can be counted on, you can be relied on. That's the
Mhm.
journey you set. And then immediately people will start being say, okay, I think I can rely on this person because he comes, he shows up, he's always interested to learn, put forward his ideas or her ideas. So that's the way you bring about a difference.
Right, it's really sage advice there, actually, and I think sometimes like you forget that that's actually what you're there to do. Is there's a problem the
Yes.
company is solving? That's why you've been hired, and that problem could
Yes.
be a very big thing or it could be a small thing, but you've
Correct.
been hired to be part of that, whether it's in the sales world or the finance world or the IT world or the software development world or whatever. It's yeah, you're
Yes.
there for that reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good advice. One of the thoughts that I had as you were talking was within the coaching that I provide, I'm always talking about, well, because mostly sales based coaching, what is the outcome that your customer's looking to achieve? And so, in many ways, this is exactly what you're saying is you're in that role within your organization, helping your organization achieve the outcome it wants to achieve and start to plan that way.
Absolutely. In fact, one of the things I coach is in a meeting when people are talking about various ways they've tried to address this problem or solved, start asking more probing questions. Okay, you've tried all of those, how many of them were successful, what was the outcome? That curiosity also attracts attention.
Mm. Do you teach them how to ask the question though? Because I can imagine that some people might feel, well, hang on, who are you? You know, this young, fresh faced person sitting here asking me, who's got 20 years of experience, why
Yes.
things haven't worked.
Yes, definitely. There is a way to ask that question. So, first thing is, even when you're talking, you give importance to how much you are interested in that problem as well.
Hmm.
And then say, while we are all here to solve this problem, I am more than curious to understand what are the things we have tried? What were the learning lessons that we have had? And was there any takeaways that we have tried to change? So then people will immediately understand that.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so there's that part of communication style as well that's really important to learn. Are there any other communication tips that you give as part of your coaching that are like really the top of mind to you right now that this is what people should be thinking about in the way in which they communicate?
Yes, many times, because these Gen Z people sometimes, most of them have this problem where they feel they're being ignored or shot down by their, seniors or whatever, right? One of the things I always tell them is follow a technique. They can ignore you, but they cannot ignore the problem you're trying to solve, which is a common thing. They're also here, there for solving, right? So first you show you're interested in that problem, but you also then say, here's what you're planning to do. Here's like a deadline or here's the timeline. Here are the things, one, two, three things I'm planning to do. This is the outcome I'm expecting, and I'm hoping this is going to make a difference.
Mhm.
When you start in that language, that personal, whatever the rapport problem, it kind of minimizes itself into a problem solving thing. So now your seniors or whatever, they cannot ignore you because they are saying, okay, this guy is ready to help me.
Mm.
So I need to listen.
Yeah. Okay. And what about reverse mentoring? Do you encourage your coachees to do that, to mentor the seniors?
Yes, they have to be very cautious though, because seniors are very experienced people. There's so much that you've got to learn from them. So when they are, interacting with them, you have to be very careful in the way you put forward those things. So you can start off with saying that I really appreciate how much experience, how much work you've put into this, how many years you've put into this. You know these things. And as I was learning this, I also came across maybe there's a different way of, taking this. Would you be open to such ideas to explore? So
Yeah.
that way, if they approach, because end of the day, when you start your journey new, there's so many things you are learning, and having somebody senior there is always that thing you can count on. So
Mm.
take that approach, work win-win, collaborate and learn.
Right. Yeah. I started on my coaching journey with a similar recognition to yours, where I was looking at, I had a graduate join the organization. She kind of came under my responsibility. And over the course of time, over a couple of years, to help to really understand the world of business, the world of work. And one day she came in with a box of chocolates, which was from her mum. And she said, my mum wanted to thank you for the work you've been doing with me because it's made such a big impact. And that moment, I recognized that the ripple effect, it wasn't just her, it was her mum, it was her brothers, it was all her family around her had seen the change in her and the way in which her relationship works with everyone around her. So that being so fulfilling was what really started me wanting to be a coach and doing coaching now that I do. So did you have a sort of similar moment that kind of came to you that was it? This is the path I need to follow.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I remember there was this undergraduate student, and she had an intern offer. So when she started doing her internship, I had coached her about how, even though she'll be very young in the meeting room, how she can be effective. So some
Mm-hmm.
of these things that I shared when she applied, and her peers began to notice her with respect, because they began to see her like somebody who is always open to contribute, willing to learn. So it kind of gave her more visibility. She began to notice that in every meeting, people would ask her, okay, what do you think about this? Do you have any other things? So for her, it was a very different thing. She was always struggling to open up. She would always remain silent. She was worried, like, where people will consider her dumb or inexperienced. But that training helped her, and she came back and said, now it gives me confidence. I can be in my meetings on my own.
Mm. No, that's great. That's really great feedback.
Yeah.
So as you know, Anjan, this podcast is called Success Matters. So what does success mean to you?
Success for me means when you are able to lead even when nobody asked you to do, even when you are able to sustain yourself through the toughest moments by saying, this is something for me to learn and move on. That mindset, that thinking, if you're able to put in yourself and are ready to move on in your toughest moment, I think that is success for me.
Okay, yeah, that's very profound. And that actually leads quite well to the question my previous guest asked. So my previous guest asked, and this is always random, and that doesn't always link to this so well. But so my previous guest asked, how well does your success serve you?
My success has served me well in the sense it has always allowed me so far to expand my knowledge of thinking. It has made me realize that I could say I am at this point, and for a moment, even if I think that's a stagnant point, it is false because it's a point from which I have to move on. That means there is so much to learn. Every time we feel we have reached a success point or we have been successful, it means it's just the beginning. There's so much more. It's not an end, it's the beginning. The more I have learned that, it has always served me well.
Okay, that's quite a philosophical way of looking at things, and there's quite often monks have a kind of similar perspective, right? That they look at there's always layers, there's always more layers, so you can go deeper into, and so that's the way I've interpreted what you've just said there, and hopefully that's kind of in line with what you were saying there.
Yeah. That's what I meant. Yes. You should not be sticking to that point and saying, okay, I'm done. There's always more.
Yeah. Okay. And the reason I equate that with monks is because I'm reading and listening to Jay Shetty's book, Think Like a Monk, at the moment. And I've literally just come to that point in his audio book where he's talking about kind of getting deeper into the different layers, as it were. And so it's almost serendipitous that I was listening to that this morning, and we're talking today about a similar sort of thing. So do you have a question for my next guest, Anjan?
What would you teach your next generation about meaning of success?
What would you teach the next generation about the meaning of success?
The meaning and value of success. What would you teach a young
Okay.
generation?
All right, so there's two parts to that. Meaning is one thing and value is another thing.
Yes.
So how do you differentiate between the meaning of success and the value of success?
Value probably drives the meaning. So if you can explain, I mean, if I were to explain to my next generation what the value of success means, I think that will give itself the meaning, lead you into the meaning. So value is first, I would say.
Values first, okay. And what because you touched on social media, you touched on the instant gratification earlier, you touched on the instant feedback as well. So in today's world, what would you say is the value of success as the message you will give to the next generation, as compared to maybe the value of success that you were brought up with?
Here's the answer for that. Value of success means believing in this law of ceiling that keeps changing. Every time we compare ourselves with others, we get trapped. And this is exactly what the generation today is getting into. They keep comparing and they take those comparisons as truth. The moment you believe comparison is a clue and not a conclusion, and that I have a lot to grow, and there's always the potential to grow higher than what you are, will always ensure that your perception of success helps you grow faster in terms of, always realizing there's more to do, and more to do. So your comparisons won't stop you, but they'll only encourage you to be more successful.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Okay. That's a very powerful way to look at it, actually. I have another question which kind of just come to mind around supporting the next generation, because AI is playing a big role in people's minds at the moment. There's a lot of concern about AI as well, taking jobs and taking careers. So what do you suggest to people, or what do you say to people who come to you and say, yeah, but AI is going to do this, that, or the other for my job?
Yes, that's a very difficult landscape right now we are staying in. We don't even know how it's going to evolve.
Hmm.
It's so dynamic and changing. But here's what that cannot change: AI cannot change the human interaction. It cannot change the way we emotionally connect with each other. Our emotions, whatever they could be, frustration, anger, disappointment, the machines can do that. So that emotion, that interaction that leads us to take decisions is still going to be human,
Yeah.
which means the ability to create authentic influence in the age of artificial intelligence still is going to be the huge currency on which everyone will be measured on. So AI in the world of AI is what everybody will be measured upon. So authentic influence cannot be taken away by artificial intelligence.
Right. Yeah. Authentic influence. I like that play on the AI acronym. I often talk about the emotional intelligence, which is what us humans have and the machine doesn't have. And also, there are certain things like the human eye, whilst if you think about photography or just the painting behind me, yes, AI could generate that, but there is something in the human eye that it can't generate. It can't see what the human eye sees, and that's based on our experiences and our stories and our values and our identities and everything else. So I think jobs will be enhanced by AI. Yes, there will be jobs that will go, but there'll be so many new jobs that come along as a result of AI that we can't even imagine today. That kind of, yes, we might go through a bit of a curve, much like the 2008 crash that you talked about, but there'll be something new on the other side of that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, cool. So we're approaching the top of our time now, and it's been a really great conversation. And what I really liked is that this is something that appeals to those sort of, I don't know, mid-20s to early 30s age group that maybe thinking about how they find the place in the world of work and what they do. So if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Sure. Thank you, Sanjay. The best way people can get in touch with me would be through LinkedIn. I'll be sharing that with you. And I also regularly post content on my Instagram. So I'm planning to start more LinkedIn newsletters that will have, this kind of tips and suggestions and how to better yourself being in the workplace. So I'll be sharing all that. So yeah, people can definitely get in touch with me through those.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for sharing your story, sharing the journey and the work you do. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and thanks once again for joining me on Success Matters.
Thank you, Sanjay. I really enjoyed the conversation too. And thank you for having me here.
To find your success, contact me at info@successmatterscoaching.com. That's info@successmatterscoaching.com.